and some logistics information. And just clicking the record button that I had forgotten. Okay, so my name is Claudia Teixeira. I'm getting us started with Welcome and Logistics. I will also be a technical facilitator today, together with Smriti Iyer. So we'll be active in the chat. If you need any help, just let us know. In terms of our audience, so today we have members of the Social Enterprises Scaling Up Community of Practice, and also some guests from the World Bank Group Gender Group. Thank you very much, Simona, for promoting this session, helping us promote the session with the Gender Group. So a few words about the Social Enterprises Scaling Up community, especially if you are our guests today. So the Social Enterprises Scaling Up is one of the working groups from the Scaling Up initiative. That's an initiative that focuses on strengthening the development community's ability to design and deliver sustainable and scalable solutions. Our community holds discussions to help build a more enabling social enterprise ecosystem and strengthen the pathways for social enterprises to scale. Our members, they connect from organizations that are key stakeholders in the social enterprise sector, such as enabling organizations that provide training, support, funding, academic institutions, government agencies, multilateral organizations, and also we have some social enterprises. So if you want to join our community and be invited to upcoming webinars and discussion sessions, I will share a link in the chat in a moment for you to add your name to our distribution list. So that was our welcoming. In terms of logistics, we are using Zoom for our session today, as you all see. In terms of navigation, if you click on the top right corner, yes, you can choose different ways to view it. I love to use the gallery view and get a sense of everybody that has joined, but you can choose a speaker view. I mean, you can choose what you prefer. On the bottom of the screen, you will have options to mute and unmute yourself, also turn the video on and off, see the participants list, and have access to the chat box. Please keep yourself muted when you're not speaking so that we can avoid background noise. And you are welcome to keep your video on. We are recording the session today because we want to be able to share it with new members that join the Social Enterprise Scaling Up community. So last thing, please, you can use the chat for questions or comments throughout the session. And we'll also have specific moments for Q&As and discussions. So during those times, you are welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question or join the discussions directly. And with that, I'll pass the word to Isabel Guerrero, our COP co-leader and the moderator of the session today. Isabel.
Thank you, Claudia. Welcome, everybody. We are excited about this session. So much has happened under COVID that has changed the way that we think about some of the priorities, and also that has shown how women have, first of all, dropped the workforce in the US, for example, 4 times more than men, because they have taken a lot of the burden of the work, both the home work, but also children, schooling. And so there's a great momentum in terms of awareness of the importance of the care economy and the role that women take in that. So we chose for this specific session 2 women who are working with women in the digital space and who have adapted through COVID to actually accelerate some of this work. So we will start with Marysela Zamora, who is the executive director of Nosotras. Nosotras works on leadership of young women, both in Costa Rica and Latin America and in Kenya, in Africa. And she's also the winner, one of the 7 winners from the World Bank's group SDGs and Her competition that had over 2,400 applicants. And she's going to tell us about this digital training program that she launched for women to be able to thrive under this COVID this long COVID period. So we will start with that and then move to Jean. So over to you, Marysela.
Thank you, Isabel, and thank you very much for having me here. It's an honor to share a little bit of what we do in Nosotras Women Connecting. So I don't know if Claudia can open up the presentation, the slides that I brought with you for you. So I am based in Costa Rica. I am a social and arts entrepreneur. I have been working in entrepreneurship around 5 or 6 years or so. I made my first company like when I was like 21, and I closed it at 22 because I was too young to even deal with that. But and after that, I decided I wanted to do social entrepreneurship and arts entrepreneurship. But this is what we try to do in Nosotras Women Connecting. So we try to say meaningful. One of the core ideas of Nosotras Women Connecting is do make and tell meaningful stories about extraordinary women and to connect women also in Costa Rica and Latin America. So we are a platform that promotes leadership in girls and women from Costa Rica, Latin America, and Kenya, Africa. Although after when the pandemic happened, we had to just put a pause on Kenya, Africa. But we work with girls and women that want to change and create change in the world. We have been working this since 2016 through different events and different activities that I'm going to tell you. So our philosophy is that storytelling is the most powerful way to spread ideas into the world. The stories are the basis of our deepest humanity and is how human makes things better. And stories of women and other minorities and their representation are the key to create richer and more inclusive world. And the most important thing that we work for is that women supporting women in communities is one of the most effective ways to create empowerment and connection. And with this in mind, we develop different ways in which we work in Nosotras Women Connecting. We create narrative and documentary films. We do community and leadership strategies. We make marketing for change, and we make arts and culture, specifically for women and some other populations in Costa Rica and in Latin America. So next one. So one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit more is the community building strategies that we do in Nosotras Women Connecting. So one of the most important things for us and one of the core principles of Nosotras is that we create communities of practice for female leaders based on storytelling tools. We believe that there is nothing more powerful than a woman telling her story to other women in order to learn and grow together. The community building that we do, it's human-centered. We believe that transformative leadership comes from the combination of head and heart decision-making. And this is why we have developed a program of how to be effective and transformative leaders for Costa Rica and Latin America. And all of this is made by a virtual design strategy because when everything happened with the pandemic 1 year ago, we were facing one of our main problems. That was everything that we do. It was necessary to have people together, like physically together. And then very quickly, when in March we had the first case in Costa Rica on March the 6th in last year. And just 2 weeks after, we decided to change every program that we had in a virtual design. And one of the other things that we did, and that was very important for us, was to try to understand what group of women were more vulnerable during the pandemic, and how to be next to them and help them, to give them the tools for they to survive the pandemic in a better way. And this is how we created our digital transformation lab for women entrepreneurs. Next one. This is a commitment with women of Latin America, because this is like the first, like we have been developing this strategy for 1 year now. And so what we're aiming to do is to make, to grow up to other countries of Latin America. So what we decided last year and this year and next year, we are in a transition period in Nosotras Women Connecting, is how to create this engaging program, because like every network that we have made, it has been growing really, really fast. And it has to do with the women that we have, how they connect, and how storytelling holds them together. So what we're trying to do right now this year is it's make this in a virtual way, and to create some other strategies to make like a hybrid kind of model, so we have presence and virtual activities. So in 2022, probably we're gonna have the first digital platform with some strategies of being like presence physically together, so it can grow in other countries of Latin America in an easier way and more economic way, and have a bigger impact. So through this, we have made all the labs for women entrepreneurs, for women in business, for women in politics, and we have made some events with amazing women like vice president, congress women, ministers, and such and such. Next one. So the new reality, we knew we have to attend entrepreneurs and the girls and young women leaders during the pandemic. Some other things that were really worrying us was the situation of girls not going to high schools, or young women in university period, or women that were going to be in their houses locked in the lockdown. So we created, like, trying to understand how can we be next to them, being for them, giving all the tools that they need, so the pandemic wouldn't mean like their life was like in a big pause, but they could do something. And just thinking about all this storytelling and connecting things, we decided to create the program Soy Valentia. And Soy Valentia, we were designing the program since 2018 with different groups of girls around Costa Rica. And when the pandemic came, everything was meant for be, again, just putting people together in the same space with training programs and some community of practice. So when that happened, again, we just try to change everything to virtual way. And it was like a great thing that happened, because last year we worked with 250 girls from every possible part of the country. And what the money that we put there, it wouldn't be impossible to work with 250 girls from all over the country. And we had like this amazing opportunity. Right now we have like this 250, probably 300, because we have some other generations of girls that are working together. They are working in their local government offices, or they're doing some work in their high schools. So with this, we were just growing really, really fast with entrepreneurs and with Soy Valentia. Next one. So one of the things that is very important is that we understood that the only reason why we exist is to serve women, to connect them, to make their lives in leadership easier, and to create a community for those women so they can grow together. And we understood that since the beginning. So when the pandemic happened, we knew it doesn't, Nosotras Women Connecting, like its value, it's not about being together only physically, but we had to understand that we were not only about that, but also what it meant for the women that were in that are in our community, our presence in their life, and how we can serve them. And when we understood this, we knew that everything that we did, like in our normal basis, since from March 2020 to 2017, what we were doing there, we were knowing our audience, and we were trying to understand how to make a bigger impact. So when the pandemic happened, we understood that the most important thing for us was to be next to women, giving them tools so they can be a community together and we can grow all together. And this was really important for us, because when you understand that, you can understand what are the ways and what are the strategies that your business can do to keep being sustainable, and we can make and we can keep doing all the impact that we want to do. And this is the other thing, we have to be open to the door to possibilities. We have to open the door to possibilities, because everything can happen, anything can happen. And of course the last year, it's like the proof that anything can happen. We can be good today, and tomorrow everything is not there. And we also understood that we're in a constant trial period, and we have to be in this mindset. And it's the idea that we have to be changing with all the reality, like with the same speed. And this is really challenging, and it's better if we can understand what are our strategies for doing all the management on change in our organizations and entrepreneurships. And this is key, because the faster you can move, the faster you can change your configuration, the faster you're going to be like responding to these new challenges that we are facing, because the world is changing really, really often, and we are more connected. So it's almost a calling that we have around that. And this is the other thing, we have to listen the needs of the population that you are attending. And with this, I mean your clients, and to understand what they need and how you can solve that problem or that need that that person has. And it's very important to be in this communication, to understand what's the best way out to be with your audience, with your clients, with your users. And this is the other thing, don't be afraid for asking.
Marysela, we need to wrap up.
Okay, yes. And the last one, I think this is, yeah, the last one.
We're over time, yeah.
Yeah, so what's the next part? Just keep working on digital tools, keep curiosity open, and foster inclusive communities in international scale. And this is the last one. And if you want to keep the conversation going, just let's get social, and those are our social media.
Thank you so much, Marysela. Lots of questions about scaling up. You mentioned that you hold people together through storytelling, and now this has shifted to digital. So we're going to be asking you more about your business model and you know how to scale up, because this is a community of practice on scaling up. But I will now move to Jean from Konexio. So Jean was my student at the Kennedy School on the course that I teach on scaling up. And she has a degree in economics and biology from Stanford University. She was a Fulbright scholar in the Paris School of Economics, has worked in Silicon Valley. And in 2020, last year, 4 years after starting Konexio, Forbes ranked her as one of the most influential 30 under 30 social entrepreneurs in Europe. She has a wonderful project, and I let her talk about it, working with refugees in France, and now expanding to Africa. But also, she has really shifted during COVID to the digital space, which is a really interesting part of this conversation. Jean, over to you.
Okay, great. So I will try, first of all, really honored to participate. And I will also try to be, concise on the time. to respect that. So I will share my slides if that's all right. Okay, great.
Yes, go ahead.
And I will be aware of the time. So great. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm just going to start and present very, very briefly what Konexio does, so you guys have an understanding, and then really quickly after that, jump into how COVID impacted us and what we're hoping to do next. So today, where we're looking at in terms of the people we work with, refugees, there are over 80 million now displaced persons in the world. There's a lot of barriers with regard to opportunities and jobs, but we see a lot of potential specifically with regard to upskilling this population. There's a lot of freelance work. There's a lot of studies that have shown the ROI behind investing and upskilling this population and the impact that it can have. So the mission of Konexio, very briefly, is to create a more inclusive society by really preparing these vulnerable populations for the future of work, having our training programs, supporting them in socioeconomic integration. And I'm going to go through pretty quickly the slides here, but today where we're at about 1,300, nearly 1,500 actually as of today's date of students who've gone through our programs. We have a positive outcome rate about 70%. So those who find a job, enroll in a degree-seeking program or become entrepreneurs 6 months post-program. We have an ambition to target 10,000 students in the next few years. And very briefly, our programs, sorry, this is a little text heavy, go from very basic digital skills, pretty advanced courses in cybersecurity, programming, cloud, with a wraparound service in the soft skills. And then very briefly, we have programs in France and then Malawi as well, where our model of partnership is to focus on training trainers locally, who then are empowered locally to continue delivering the programs, and we are there kind of as backup. And today, in terms of our presence, we are present very majorly in France, in different regions now as well. And then in terms of our international deployment, we started out in Malawi. We're working with partners to deploy similarly in Kenya and Jordan on the same model of training trainers. Very briefly on where we situate ourselves in the market today, we see ourselves as really trying to meet this unmet need for a lot more digital talent, digitally skilled talent, and bridging this divide with a new untapped pool of students that will then become a digitally skilled talent. So to get onto kind of the next part of COVID and its impact on us. So just a few stats regarding the digital skills, digital divide during COVID. Some of the most important things that came to light is that society's most vulnerable individuals, those who are low income, who did not finish school, disproportionately made up the losing end of this divide. For example, in the US, we found that only 4% of people with less than a high school diploma were able to work remotely at the start of the crisis. Women were also found to be disproportionately impacted, and with Konexio, more than 50% of our students at the start did not either have the computers or the connection to continue their training. And so in terms of what we actually did and implemented in place, Konexio, so in France, what we were able to do is to really focus on our online training and think about how do we take courses for those where that was possible and adapt it to an online format. We also, you have a screenshot on the side of actually what we did to really, make our courses more digitalized. And then we did also mentorship programs to keep the social connection. In Malawi, we did a lot of distribution of our laptops and data bundles to allow our students to continue their training as well. And then finally, on a second level, we also mobilized outside of just Konexio. We were mobilized with the French government. They launched an initiative called Digital Solidarity, kind of a hotline for the 13 million people excluded in France digitally to be able to help with them for basic services, going to get their welfare payments and things. And we were mobilized as one of the key actors in this, as well as different working groups, for example, UNHCR, who now have a specific strategy in their national policy of digital divide that they did not have before. And then finally, in the last part of the presentation, to make sure I'm not kind of going too far on time, is what are the lessons that we've learned? One is that digital work is here to stay. According to McKinsey, we've seen that the digital kind of acceleration, transformation and such has actually vaulted 7 years forward in adoption of different practices. And so this is in one sense an opportunity, but also in another a great source of exclusion for those who are on the wrong side of.
Doctor. Allô?
Sorry?
Allô? Allô? Oui.
Oh. And then Konexio, as also most companies, we've also learned to become more fluid, operating online, reorganizing our work, migrating rapidly to digital technologies, and having a more distributed team. Regarding the challenges, obviously working on different time zones, trying to foster a sense of identity are things that are challenges, but the outcomes is that, it pushes you to be highly effective as a distributed team and to have more means of working, across, different lines of communication, different lines of contact as well. And then finally, the things learned outside of Konexio and the greater ecosystem is that COVID has also put an increased strain on resources, and that, to really think about how do we get our stakeholder buy-in, the impact really must meet the felt needs immediately. And then very briefly on the last part of where Konexio aims to go in the next months and years, that we have a growth strategy relying on 2 key factors, intensifying our activities in our current locations, and then also expanding out to new geographic areas. And so that for us will come through shared value partnerships with a host of sectors and different areas, as well as also generating more sustained revenue and different revenue models through our kind of a social enterprise, whether that's working on a more bottom line approach with, work impact sourcing providers of work, and thinking about, another future more thinking model of philanthropy. And so we have specific indicators in France of how we want to scale that I've listed here. Duplication, diversification activities, and then also internationally where, some of the first really positive results of our work in Malawi, where we're working on the ground with our partners. Some of our students on average in the first pilots have shown about a 500 amount of income per month, which is really, really interesting and exciting for us. And the objective of us to grow this local program to, the Malawian government actually after the pilot has invited us to extend the program to also include local employed youth, and to work, more towards creating scalable structures that help us to really reach more self-generated revenue and also digital tools for mass deployment. And there I've put down some of the local, the locations in terms of where we're also expanding our international model and our goals in the next few years. So I went through that maybe hopefully not over time, Isabel.
Exactly on time. Thank you. Because I'm sure there are loads and loads of questions. So I'm going to open up for questions. If you can either raise your hand or jump in. I want to start with one question using the benefit of being the moderator, Jean. You didn't talk too much about the employers. So a lot of your success is the income increase for the students who learn digital coding and all that. When you replicate going to refugee camps, for example, how do you bring the employee part? Because in France, you develop relationships with companies who are interested in this. How do you do it in a refugee camp? And then I'm opening to questions, Jean.
Yeah, so for us, and I'm happy to also provide some of the slides information because I know I went through that a little quickly, but in terms of how we see it, it's kind of also the same target clients, I would say, so to speak. In France, we get to see them in person in the sense, or they're more on the ground since they've taken the talent, they're hiring them directly. In Malawi, given that there are also a lot of restrictions, they're living in a camp, they're not able to, be physically with the employers, we're really betting on the gig economy and the global markets. So what we've done is actually push them a lot more towards freelance work. So our students are trained, but they bid on global markets. So, and we've also brokered partnerships with Upwork, one of the big freelance platforms, and companies like Appen, which are one of the biggest companies today in the world. They have a market cap about 2.4 billion on AI data training, where we work specifically with companies that need this work. So it's a different, kind of model or client, but it's the same approach.
Yeah, principle. Great, wonderful. Elaine. You're in
Okay,
mute.
good. Yeah, no, I'm trying to figure out, okay, which button to touch. I don't see the raise hand icon, Claudia, in case it's there. Thank you, Marisa. Thank you, Jean. This is very fascinating. I'm really taken back by the fact that, Jean, you mentioned that the incomes have been raised by $500 per month. I mean, this is quite incredible. When I lived in Malawi, I think income was like $100 a month. So to have refugees raising $500 is quite an impressive feat. So I guess you have scaling plans, which I think is wonderful because it'd be great to see a model increase over. I'm interested in like how you got into Malawi, how you engaged with the government, and then how some of the scaling challenges you see in terms of like what might be preventing you from your organization from really expanding, right? So what are the key ecosystem problems, whether in terms of government regulations, or what do you see as hindrances that might actually are impediments to actually being able to fully scale and just take it forward?
No, those are really great questions. Maybe first on, kind of the model and how, we kind of built that up. So I think one of the things that is really interesting and powerful about the model is that when we structured it, we really thought about how, we can think about the future of this also being able to scale to other regions. And so what's really important is to have local implementing operational partners that really know the local context. And we really come and bring the value add with the content, the IP, all the materials, the methodology of how to train the trainers. And we are really intentional about tracking impact. So we have like a lot of data, questionnaires, and we have an online learning platform that the students feed the quizzes, the mid-point evaluations across. And so I think in that sense, what we've able to do is broker the partnership with the local partners, providing the social support, the logistical support. We work with JRS, Jesuit Refugee Service, as well as UNHCR. Those are our big partners. And why Malawi was that we were really thinking about a place that met several important criteria. And in terms of the, need in the camp, the stability of the infrastructure, the stability of the partners that we needed, and finally, there was an ease of language, given that a lot of the students in the camp, it's home to about 45,000 inhabitants, are actually French Francophone. They come mainly from Democratic Republic of the Congo or Burundi or Rwanda. And so given the language ease, we started there. And then now I think with Jordan and Kenya, we're expanding into more Anglophone regions. And so the second part of your question on what are the big limiting factors for us to really scale is one, the partnerships, I think. Making sure that operationally, we spent a lot of time trying to do diagnostics around what are the needs of the students, what are the other factors that would, prevent them from completing a course. Could it be very specific things? They're too far from the center, the walking distance is 2 hours. If that's an issue, then that would be really hard. So I think getting a lot of the logistical factors down, and then the strength of the partnership, and this just comes down to HR and financial capacity for them to carry also the project, was really important. And so I think we were lucky in finding a very solid partner with the organization on the ground where they also want this to continue. And I think final point on that is just, I think we've seen with even, so it's UNHCR, WFP, a lot of the big agencies, they're realizing that climate change, with a lot of the global tendencies, this problem is not going to go away. It's here to stay and increase over time. And a lot of these organizations are, I think, increasingly worried about livelihood. Today, we're at an average rate of stay of a refugee in a camp about 17 years. A few years ago, that was under 10 years. And it's just heavily increasing over time, steadily increasing over time. And so I think they're thinking about, if people are here to stay, what are ways we can help them to become self-sufficient, so that it's not once they become resettled, then they start their life anew, have economic opportunity. What are ways to get them into the labor market now that will enable them to train and work towards it, so that when they do, resettle eventually, they will be even more skilled and even more ready.
Great. And then I think the thinking out of the box, no? You think that a refugee is in a camp and cannot go out. But by thinking in the global market, you are connecting them through the internet to the outside world for work. Yeah. So anybody has a question? Anybody else has questions? I see Maria there from our community of practice. Hi, Maria. I have a question for Marisela.
Hello.
Hi, great to have you. Marysela, I have a question for you. You talk about the importance of holding the groups together. Storytelling, absolutely about holding. The leadership development is about holding the women, so the young women, so that they can feel part of a group that helps them with their own image of themselves and their own, vision of their capacity to change the world. So how does this translate in digital? When it's such a personal,
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
So what we did, like at the beginning of the pandemic, what we understood that it was key to put in every subject or every training, personal development, and we have a psychologist with us all the process, and this make a huge difference because they were they were not only in a training for their leadership or for their entrepreneurship, but they were in a safe space where they could talk about their emotions and how they were feeling, how they were frustrated. And also we create like accountability, like work groups. And so they had like a partner and they would do like their homeworks together. And we used to do like a lot of small projects in the training programs, so they had to socialize and they had to be together. So for now, because the most important thing for us is how they can just have the link and never get separated. And for this the human part is very important. And then we encourage them to do all kind of social media techniques, for example, for the leadership, for the girls in leadership. We used to have a lot of homeworks, and our strategy was about creating Valentia, which you saw her there, like this narrative tool, talking about how she was living all this pandemic thing, and they felt like they were Valentia. So these little strategies were the ones who help us like all together just to create that bond between them.
Wonderful, great. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Josh, and then Smithy. Yes.
Thank you. So just shifting gears a little bit, I'm interested, as the bank is looking to improve its scaling up capacity, and obviously these early stage ventures are doing the same. I'm wondering if it's how, from the bank's perspective and also from the entrepreneur's perspective, is there a way for a win-win as far as scaling up the venture and the bank's capacity, by the bank working directly with these companies that do have these digital solutions and do have these rapidly scalable solutions, and have that as part of the bank's actual ability to have the most amount of impact? Just curious from the perspective of both parties of whether that's happening and or if that's part of the way forward for the COP.
Great. So I'm going to ask both of you to come in, but Josh, we've tried this so much for so many years, starting with the development marketplace, bringing innovations that could then be scaled through the bank. My experience is that the business model of the bank has been one that needs such volume that it's very difficult to scale smaller, ventures that are starting, and that you need an intermediate step in order to get there. It's only when you reach a certain scale that it becomes attractive for task managers, for example, to take on a project that has this as part of it. I think Elaine and Natalia have been doing a lot, putting within bank projects components that have this, but then the digital brings in a whole new dimension of scalability that we didn't used to have. So Jean, let's go to you, and then Marysela, and then Elaine. I also want you to come in on this.
Yeah. So I think to answer the question, I think that's something we definitely could be, interested in exploring some of those discussions, given that I think some of the things that we're really thinking about on the kind of the platform side, the technological side is, how do we continue reinforcing and really strengthening kind of the core components of our program, so that when we adapt, with a given new partner, that it's all the more, locally relevant for, the context. And so, I think and it depends on maybe the model of the technology. For us, it's really thinking about training trainers, and then through the trainers, you have a lot more impact locally. And so I think for us was thinking about what level of impact, also who do you choose that can also relay a much greater level of direct service delivery on the ground. And so right now we're not any, specific, we've talked to some different colleagues, but in different research geographical regions, but would be definitely interested in seeing that. And I don't know if, for Isabel mentioning that, for some of these, maybe they need to be organizations that are a lot bigger scale for it to make sense maybe, but it could be interesting also to be able to explore a smaller pilot, because I think it's when you are a smaller organization, you have that agility to also develop and pivot a lot more quickly, and to say, okay, we're not trying this is not working. How do we, develop something that could work and innovate, iterate a lot more quickly over time?
Yeah, Marysela, you want to come in on this?
Yes, like for example, in Costa Rica and Latin America, this is a huge challenge, not only because we need that intermediate stage that Isabel was saying, that is very important. For example, for us, we're going through that intermediate. We're not able yet to be interesting for the banks. But I think one of the things that is happening is that the banks are really looking to understand these new models, and specifically in Costa Rica and Latin America is still a little bit behind, and it happens with arts and culture and with this technology, and to understand the impact. And there is a lot of different terms that probably in the banks in Costa Rica and Latin America still are not there yet, but I think there has to be a lot of awareness around both parties, because entrepreneurs in the other side, we're really scared of banks. And I work with women entrepreneurs, and it's I don't know what's going on there, but it's a miscommunication really, really bad. And one of the things is like you don't go to banks because you are afraid of what's going to happen, and the banks are not friendly enough for small entrepreneurs growing up. So I think it has to be like, try to level that up.
Yeah. Just reminded me in Latin America, of course, there's the iLab, which is the IDB lab, which is like a conduit for projects and innovations like that. Akim in UNDP has really pushed UNDP labs in the field office to tap on innovations, but also to transform the organization from within. Elaine, you want to come in?
Yes. So in reference to Josh's question, I think, so that within the bank, I mean, you have the IFC and you have the World Bank projects. And I think within the IFC, they can probably work more one-on-one with a company to help scale internationally. And I think, when you have a model that's very replicable in many different countries, sort of like the Bridge Academy, this is something that's also possible. Within bank projects, they tend to be very country specific. So you're looking for solutions that are within that country. There is a little bit of hesitancy when it's like a foreign enterprise coming in, even though we're trying to also socialize the bank that, it doesn't matter. What you were looking for is impact. So one of the tools that we're looking at is how do you use results-based outcomes or results-based financing to be able to help scale these type of models within the country. So you tie it with the bank project's objectives. Like, let's say if they are trying to increase refugee incomes, this is something that they can say, okay, this is a potential model. How do we encourage these type of companies to come in? And then it doesn't matter which company it is, as long as we're getting the results that we want. So I think the results-based financing, it's normally in the past has been mainly applied to the government delivering on services, but the idea is like, can we also bring in the private sector to be delivering on it? The government kind of is the intermediary on that, because then they can do the selection. And then from that, you can pay for the results. And this could be another scaling up strategy that we're also examining a little bit more closely.
Great. Smithy, you've been patiently waiting.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the micro, and I'm just the question's really for Marysela. I just was interested in understanding what your revenue model was and how you're raising funds for the work that you're doing.
So we have our business model. We have a model working on just trying to get all the funds that we can from United Nations, UNICEF, International Cooperation in Costa Rica, and some other organizations in the world that they are funding this work. And then we have another model that we work with private companies and with some government, like, I don't know, this is a very Costa Rican figure. It's like enterprises of the government, and they are sponsoring or paying for programs directly for entrepreneurs or for teenagers. So we're trying to build and to work on this, and then we have a program that is in a pilot phase, to charge very small amounts of this money to these women entrepreneurs, so they can so we can do it. Like, this is why we're doing all digital, so it has to be like a really small amount of money, and then you have access to all our trainings. So we're trying to move in these three models, because the idea is it could be sustainable through time. So this is why we're moving to this part of how we can charge women like really small amounts of money and have other women sponsored there, so we can just keep growing.
Any other questions?
I have a follow-up question. It's to Marysela. She was talking about, Marysela, so you were talking about government enterprises, and I was curious to know what that is, in terms of, because of one of the interests of the community is to look at the social enterprise as a sector, right? And especially how can multilateral organizations or even the government help social enterprises scale as a sector, meaning having specific laws or forms for them to, incorporate in a specific form, so that they can cooperate easier with the government. So I was curious to learn if this type of organization is something like that. Is there any support from the government to social enterprises in Costa Rica?
No, there is no kind of like nothing. Like, we have like 2 small funds, but they are really small. It's really hard to get them because they are really small. And there is not such a, like, this conscious about social enterprises is still not in the country. Talking about enterprises with impact and having all these things is not something that is really here yet. And we're trying with Nosotras Women Connecting, try to do this, but social enterprises led by women. But still there is a lot of, we have to grow a lot of in these terms, and with governments, with the banks, and with all the international cooperation, and with the social enterprises too.
Elaine?
Hi, yeah, so this question is again geared towards Jean. So there are a lot of social enterprises that are working in the digital space of providing those digital skills and training. I just wanted to maybe get a better grasp of how Konexio does things differently. Like, how would you differentiate yourself from the others?
Yeah, so I think, and some of them, I think we work well, and we see also the complementarity of what we do. For example, the SAMA sources or digital divide data, who are more, I think, vertical in the sense that they do, they specifically work on kind of the micro work or the smaller tasks, some of which, we are able to kind of provide also in terms of the training. And I think the model we have is kind of coming back to also our interest in also being able to scale outside and not keep everything, because I think there are interesting parts of having the vertical in the sense that you're able to integrate everything. The business model is very clear, but there's also a lot of upfront investment costs that are a lot higher. And oftentimes what I hear about some of the platforms is you have to be really careful about how to balance the workflow in terms of the demand from the companies and also the supply from, and how do you equate that over time? And I think our strength is in a few different things. One is that I think we want to empower local organizations, training, the trainers to really empower and get, this local pool of talent. And that inherently at the end of the day, in terms of the skill sets they gain, it's similar in the sense that they're able to work, but we're able to maybe scale at a larger impact and work a lot with, a whole horizon of organizations rather than trying to create everything and have it in-house ourselves. And I think the second is our maybe approach and also targeting a wide variety of organizations and, providers of the work themselves. So at the same time, we're diversifying. We have special partnerships we brokered with Upwork, but that doesn't prevent us from going on to other freelance platforms as well to diversify risk for students and also for them to gain more competitivity, and then also directly to search much bigger providers, companies out there like Appen that are one of the biggest in terms of data and AI training, who then also their clients are all the big tech firms that are out there. And so I think for us, having this much more wide approach, and we want to work with a host of local organizations, and then second, in terms of sourcing the work, we're not specifically targeting one client at the same time, but we're relying on platform providers or those who are able to harness kind of a whole, pool of different types of tasks that are already kind of bucketed down, organized for us. I think helps us gain in terms of the kind of resources that are necessary to do it kind of within ourselves. And then finally, in terms of the skills themselves, I think in that sense, I think what we try to also innovate on is really keep an eye on like what is also coming out. It's, with, some of the things we've seen, there's been a lot of transition and a lot of, change in the last few years, and then that's gonna continue to change. But how do you adapt it for individuals that might be, not have the same kind of usability or accessibility to technology? How do you make it, really relevant for them? So some of our students, for example, with our refugee populations, we do a lot of, even in the beginning, if it's very basic digital skills, a lot of training on like the language plus the technical syntax that you will learn, because it's not evident for them, to learn how to navigate all the tools and all the vocabulary that comes with. So we really try to make it adaptable to their learning experience, so that, if we sent them to a MOOC, a Coursera or a Udacity, I think that's not the target population already. Those, are at about 3 to 5% kind of completion rates. It's a very specific type of person, but also to make sure that, what we're doing is adaptable for the students that we work with.
Yeah, so I think, Jean, in terms of uniqueness, I think what I saw when you presented it in the class, and then what you've developed, what I saw as unique is that you had a really good sense of what it took for the refugees who got the training to be employed. I think tapping into that market need is what I think differentiates you a lot, because there's lots of companies doing digital training, but the fact that they get employed and in such high percentages is your unique value, I think. And that's why it's so difficult to replicate in other countries as well. Gail.
Yeah, maybe just hi, Isabel. Just to the second question on that. So like what kind of credentialing do you have? Are you giving credentials from like specific products? So what does someone walk away with, or is it credentialing to a specific employer? And I guess secondly, could you just say a couple of words about micro work, like what that looks like, just to be tangible? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. And if anything's not clear, happy to also, exchange afterwards as well. So on the credential side, it depends, I think, on the context. So if I gave very different examples in France, given that it's very diploma based, and I think the high rates of success we have for our students is because we're able to certify, we're a certified training provider, and we're able to certify our students up to a 2 years worth of a college degree in our programs. And so that kind of that stamp of validity, and it's an external auditor that comes in, that gives them the official diplomas, I think really helps in that market. In Malawi, for example, what's interesting is that given it's a much wider base in terms of skill sets, and I'll get into the micro work and the freelance work right after that, it's not necessarily maybe the specific badges. We were thinking about, giving them specific badges on like the basic digital skills or, alinda.com, or we looked into all of these certificates. But I think what was most important for them was to get actual job experience and client reviews of others. That was like the most important. I think a lot of times when clients will select them on Upwork, it's based on getting, those first really great reviews. And so I think that instead of like the diploma in France is what's most critical. And I guess the issue in that is just getting them started. And so what was really great with Upwork was that we got coaches who helped remove certain, give them certain perks and remove certain barriers to entry. So for example, we had coaches review their profiles, give them, suggestions on how to really market up their profiles, things like that, that really help. And then we're actually in discussion with Upwork right now. It's a really interesting, ambitious project they're trying to put, but they want to tag potential workers on the platform on kind of a social impact label. We discussed the fact that maybe putting a label that's not refugee, because that can also be very stigmatizing in a certain sense, but something that labels this talent as diverse, as social impact, could also be a selling point for our like students or organizations that source students like ours. And so that's something that they're potentially thinking of, releasing in the next few months. And then in terms of what micro work is, so essentially there's, the platforms that you have, like the Amazon's Mechanical Turk, where you're literally doing a lot of mini tasks, which can range from, image tagging to, data entry to simple tasks. Those are the very micro tasks. And then what our students have, we prepare them for kind of the general basis of doing, these basic digital tasks, but we've seen that the ones that are most successful, we've have some who've actually been earning over 10,000 at this point. It's been really well in terms of their work in, in the Malawi program, is that they start getting more longer term projects. So, doing market research, things like transcription, translation, certified translation, those are things that, these are projects that give them, just one project can give them hundreds of dollars. And so that's where some of them have started to angle and specialize on. And then I think the eventual path, and we've seen maybe 1 or 2 students reach that already, is also to really get into a profession. The closest one to kind of the base of the skill set is becoming virtual assistants. And that's something we've gotten even other companies, partners trying to talk to us about. They were saying, given also just things being a lot more remote, we're interested in working with virtual assistants. Do you have, students who can do that work? And so that's starting to get into a specific profession, but we really started with basic skills, basic tasks, and then it kind of evolved in terms of complexity, in terms of kind of the length of the project over time.
Wonderful, great. Sorry, yes, Gail. Maria is with Maria. I couldn't see the raise hand. I'm sorry. I think you've raised your hand for a long time. Could we have Maria and then go back to you, Gail?
Sure, of course.
Maria, come here.
Sorry, maybe it's a bit different, the question, but on the way to the World Women's Day, what is your greatest satisfaction as women leaders in scaling? It's a question for both of you.
Great question.
Wow. I don't know, this month always is so full of emotions and plans of what we want to do and what we're hoping of the world and the institutions that can help us. And I always use this day and with all the community that we have to be together and just to grow as a group of leaders. And this is one of the things that maybe I love most about Nosotras Women Connecting, is that we are together as leaders trying to make things differently. And when you have that and you can scale that up, when you have a group of women, you can scale that up. It's easier and it's more fun.
Great, thank you, Jean.
No, I think it's a great time. I was asked this question recently on another roundtable yesterday, and I think it's more, now more than ever, I think it's really important to, anything for me, I speak from also trying to really think about the future of work, who will be there, given that we have this famous stat that by 2030 a lot of the jobs have yet to be created. And so how do we adapt? And I think being at the forefront of that, being able to think about how are we going to prepare, and how also we want to include and make sure that this future workforce is as diverse as possible, and also know that in this future workforce, the fact that we want to make it as diverse as possible will also make it more richer, like economic speaking, the arguments behind having a much more diverse team and diverse workforce will also speak a lot for the future creation, the innovation that we can have.
Thank you so much.
I went over time, but Gail and Jean and Maria, you're welcome to stay. But I'm just going to wrap up, but we will leave the Zoom room open. So thanks to everybody. This was a very nice session. We have recorded it. It will be available online for the community of practice, and also for anybody who wants to learn about this. I think we discussed really interesting points about scalability, and also in this session, scalability through the World Bank, which is very interesting to all of us. So thank you, Marysela. Thank you, Jean. It's amazing the work that you're doing. It's wonderful to be able to share it and learn from you. So thank you very much. And Gail, Jean, if you want to stay.
Yeah, for 1 minute.
I have just a few minutes if that's.
It was sort of a philosophical question, because I think a lot of people thought that with Coursera and edX and all of these large General Assembly, and I think a lot of people thought that teaching digital skills was sort of solved at scale. So I was just, I guess, thinking about like, what's your secret, or what's your strategic, is it your focus on the connection, like the wraparound, sort of the connection with the ultimate clients? Is it the identification of the potential students? And I guess the other, sort of in brackets, like, are you developing your own curriculum, or are you standing on top of all of this, remarkable curriculum development that's already been done?
No, I mean, that's a really good question. And I don't think for us, we use some of the content, or we've tried to see how we can adapt it. And we're also in talks with a potential partnership with Udacity right now. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that's for at least the students on the basic digital skills, which is still big part of the population in France, we're at 1 out of 5 people that are digitally excluded, which is, for a developed country, it's like a 20% of the population. It's still quite considerable. Is that there's kind of this also question of the online on offline kind of what is the ideal mix? On one hand, there's just the very paradoxical, to get online first and to be able to use these platforms, you need to have those basic digital skills. And so some of our students we work with actually are not at that point yet. You also talk maybe about leapfrog technology, the fact that some people go straight to smartphones. But I think right now, at least unless that changes in the next 2 decades, we're still in a world where to work, we still are on more computers, tablets, and not just phones. And even, what's really interesting is we're looking at different fields. We have students who come and who are in certain fields in construction, hospitality, the cleaning services industry. A lot of their jobs are being digitalized, where they have the need to actually acquire these skills to stay pertinent in their current job. And so I think that's something we see. And in terms of, I think, we do have a certain part in the series where you say we have all these resources that are free, that are online. Once you have those, don't hesitate to use those. But I think we also maybe attract a certain profile of students that maybe are not learning just the, use the Udacity way, because you can pick and choose, you're very independent, autonomous. Some of our students prefer a more blended learning approach, where you do have people, who start with you in person, and then you move towards a more online model and you're guided. So I think that's kind of the mix as well we play upon. That's not necessarily, the same profile. I think just the same clientele that maybe a Udacity or Coursera attracts.
Great, thank you very much. It was fascinating.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you very
much, Jean. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.